Welcome to another episode of Dave's Imaginations. In this episode, we're going to go through the Dungeon Crawl Classic, Wizard. If you like casting spells, this is going to be the character class for you. We're going through all the details of the Wizard right after this. Stay with me. The Wizard. Let's go through the PDF. You owe allegiance to no man, aye, but a demon or god may hold sway upon your soul. You are a tight-lipped warlock studying ancient tomes, a witch corrupted by black magic, a demonologist trading soul slivers for secrets, or an enchanter muttering chants in a lost tongue. You are one of many foul mortals clutching at power. Will you succeed? Low-level wizards are indeed very powerful, but high-level wizards fear for their souls. Wizards gain 1d4 hit points, the least of any of the classes. 1d4 hit points at each level. They have the least number of trainings. However, they do still have a dagger, a longbow, longsword, shortbow, and a short sword, and a staff. Wizards rarely use armor, as it hinders their spellcasting. They can be any alignment. Caster level is congruent with their wizardy level. The magic is unknown, dangerous, and inhuman. Even the best wizards occasionally fail to properly harness spells with unpredictable results. Wizards thus inculcate their preferred magics, lest they err in casting a spell and corrupt themselves with misdirect magical energy. At first level, a wizard determines 4 spells, and as per the table we'll get to in a second. And then at higher level, he'll know more spells. Known spells are determined randomly, so you have to roll on the list of spells, and they may only be of a level for which the wizard is eligible, as shown by the max spell level in the column. Wizard chooses the level before making his die roll. High level spells are more powerful but harder to cast. Wizard casts spells by making a spell check. A wizard spell check is usually 1d20 plus his intelligence mod plus his caster level. In some cases, a wizard may roll a different die on the spell check. And you'd have to see this Mercury magic. Supernatural patrons. Wizards weave magic spells in consultation with powers from supernatural places and the outer planes. Demons and devils, angels, celestials, and so on. Concepts foreign to mortal comprehension whisper these secrets, exchange for favors best left unexplained. To invoke a patron, these are patron, the wizard must spellburn at least 1 point of an ability and cast a spell to invoke a patron. They may be additional requirements depending on the specific circumstances, presuming the patron condescends to attend the wizard. Some negotiation may be required. A bauble exchange, a secret name spoken, a sacrifice token burned, or maybe a quest performed. The patron deigns to act, it sends an emissary to assist the wizard in the way the patron deems most appropriate. Invoking a patron is a powerful magic. They should not be used lightly. And then they go through some of the common patrons. Familiars. More than one wizard has found comfort in the company of a black cat, a snake. A wizard may utilize the spell Find Familiar to obtain such a partner. Luck. A wizard's luck modifier applies to rolls for corruption and Mercury magic. We'll get to that in a second. Languages. Wizards know 2 additional languages for every point of intelligence modifier, and that's in Appendix 11. Action dice. Wizard's first action die can be used for attack or spells, but his second action die can only be used for spell checks. The 5th level wizard can cast 2 spells in a single round, the first with the D20 and the second with his D14. Note that the result of the Mercurial magic may modify the action dice based on the dice chain. So here we see the wizard's table, the attack modifiers on the second column, the crit die. As always, now you can see he has a special, the wizard has a special crit table. Action die as we just described, can be used for spells or attacks. Here's your number of spells and the maximum level of those spells. And then you have your modifiers to your reflex, fortitude, and willpower. Again, the reflex, this is if you already had a +1 to your agility, this would be an additional +1. So at level 1, if you already had a +1 agility, you would add a +1 to, for this reflex column. So your actual reflex saving throw would be a +2. And then you have your titles here: chaotic, lawful, neutral. Chaotic wizard would be a cultist. A lawful wizard at level 3 would be a conjurer. A neutral wizard at level 5 would be a sorcerer. So let's go and look at one of those spells. Dropping down to the spell chapter, magic, I believe it is, magic. You can see that in the magic chapter we have spells for wizards and clerics, and so I would suggest reading through all this. Maybe I'll have a separate video on all of the magic, but I just want to jump to the level 1 spells, and here we can see a list. I don't know, is there 30 of these? You'd roll on this table and you would randomly get spells. And if we just, they have one called cantrip, that's interesting. Let's just open that up. Cantrip. So to do this, if you wanted to cast this spell, you would have to roll a d20. You would consult the table. Now remember that d20 is modified by your intelligence and your level, I believe. Then you consult this table to see if it's what happens. So reading this cantrip, level 1, ranges up to 20 foot per caster level. Duration varies. Casting time is 1 action. Your save is a will versus spell check. As wizards learn their craft, they practice their many minor incantations that produce simple visual and auditory effects. This spell can be used to apply magical energy to many minor tasks with inherent risks that come with spellcasting. Few wizards are so bold as to frequently invoke cantrips, but their availability is sometimes valuable. The cantrip spell can be used to enact any effect that the caster pronounces at casting with the limits of the spell as outlined in the spell check table below. The manifestation varies. Corruption is not available. A misfire, you would roll a 1d4. The caster would have a misfire. Here, we see if we roll something less than 11. Now, again, remember this is modified by your intelligence. Less than 11, it's lost. Now, at a level 1, you would have a misfire, and you'd have to roll on the misfire table. Now, above 11, it would succeed. So notice here, though, that the intensity of this cantrip changes with the higher you roll. So at 12 to 13, the caster creates a simple visual effect at the distance of 20 feet per caster level. For example, a flash of a light, dancing lights, array of moonlight. 14 through 17, could be as above, or the caster can create a simple auditory effect in a similar range. And 18, 19 as above, or the caster can create simple kinetic effects of a simple range. And then finally, as above, or the caster can generate dangerous fluid or energy of some kind that goes up to 1 to 3 damage. Alright, so that is how the spell works. Quick addendum on magic. Let's jump over to the PDF. So in magic, you do anyone casting magic. You have the clerics, you have the wizard, you have the elves that can cast magic. When your character casts magic, you roll on a 1d20, add your caster level, and apply your luck modifier. This is a spell check, right? Also, you add your personality modifier if you're cleric, intelligence modifier if you're a wizard. Wizards also apply modifiers for wearing bulky armor, and there may be other modifiers specific to certain circumstances. You compare your result to the spell table, and you get the actual result of the spell. The higher, the better. Spell check made when the spell is first cast, and then if the casting time is more than 1 round, higher results may reduce the casting time. Casting spells can result in criticals and fumbles. Spell check results in a natural 20 as a critical success. The caster receives an additional bonus to his check equal to his caster level. Compare the casting table for that specific spell for the result. A spell check with the natural 1 is always a failure. A result of 1 may also result in corruption or disapproval for the clerics. Concentration. Some spells require concentration. While concentrating, the wizard or cleric can take no action beyond walking half speed. Combat damage, a fall, or other significant interruptions require the spellcaster to make a will save against a DC 11, or they lose their concentration when the spell's interrupted. Spell checks by other classes, if you're a warrior, you shouldn't be casting a spell. But if you do, you roll a d10 for the spell check instead of a d20. The thieves also have an ability to roll a higher die. Saving spells in general, the saving throw against a spell uses a DC difficulty class equal to the spell check. For example, a color spray cast with a spell check resulting in a 17 requires a will save of 17 or higher to resist. Reversing the spells. So, you have the ability to learn a spell in reverse. So, like mending could be a tear, or enlarge could be reduce. Now, this is more difficult, and so if you want to cast it in the reverse, you have to use one lesser dice. So if you're rolling a d20, you'd probably use a d16 instead. Spellburn. This is something that's really cool. So wizards, in particular, have the ability to reduce any of their attributes by 1 to increase the die they roll. When they roll that d20, their spellcasting roll, they can increase the result of that by burning one of their attributes. So if you needed a 12 and you rolled an 11, you can burn one of your attributes. So let's say you had a strength of 10. You can reduce that strength of 10 back down to 9 and add that to your spell to get to the number you need to go. Now, when you do that, your modifiers related to that attribute would go down. So if you went from a 9 to 8, you go from 0 modifier to a -1. Now, you do get some of that back on a long rest. I believe you get 1 point of your attributes back in a long rest. So, but you can burn as many of those as you want. If you want to, indeed, in here, it says if you want to burn up to 20 points of an ability scores in one fell swoop, it's an automatic critical hit. So you can also use a spell burn if you cast a spell. Remember, if you cast a spell and you don't get that requirement. So if you color spray and you didn't roll that 12, let's say you got a 10 and you didn't spend any spell burn to get it, and you would actually lose that spell. And you can cast as many times as you want during the day until you lose the spell. And so if you lose the spell, though, you can get it back by using the spell burn to regain that spell, and it would be 1 point of spell burn for each level of the spell. Now, failed spell burn, a magic user who rolls a natural 1 on a spell check while using spell burn suffers the loss of that ability and still doesn't get to cast, and still has to roll on his chart to see the effect of that spell, of that failed spell. Spell burn by clerics. Clerics don't do spell burn. We'll just leave it at that. Don't do it. All right. And then healing spellburn damage. All right, so this is saying that sometimes our clerics would tandem with a wizard and heal the wizard as they were doing the spellburn. And this says, hey, the cleric's god probably isn't going to appreciate that. The god is likely not in alignment with the patron of the wizard. And so here it talks about the different spellburn actions, things you could do to mitigate, or to do instead of doing attributes. You could do a number of different things, and you can roll this table. Regaining spells, you regain all of your spells on a long rest. And then Mercury, the firstborn son of a witch hanged at the trial, wields black magic adroitly. An orphan raised by satyrs is a student of druidry. As a result of the effect of magical spells varying according who casts it, a magical rite invoked by one magic mage may be powerful or even different than the same ritual cast by a peer. The variegations are not predictable, as the subtleties that produce them can never be fully cataloged. Mercurial magic. The mercurial nature of magic is reflected in the game terms. When a wizard learns a new spell, he rolls on a table, like that 5-2 table, to determine how the spell manifests in his hands. The percentile roll is adjusted by his luck modifier, and the player rolls on that table 5-2 for every new spell he learns. effects are specific to that spell. So, when you cast a spell at great cost, every time the wizard casts a spell, someone he knows dies. Yikes, that's pretty severe. If we just roll down, that's too far. So let's go to 78, Mentalism. The wizard casts the spell using ESP alone. He need not move, speak, breathe, or use the material ingredients to evoke the effects. So whenever you learn a new spell, you roll on this to see how that spell is manifest. Alright, so then you have things called corruption for wizards. Low-level wizards, high-level wizards are subject to corruption. Continued use of magic results in changes. Each and every time a wizard rolls a natural 1 on a spell check, he suffers the effects of a spell failure. Moreover, the spell may misfire and he may suffer a corruption. In that you can burn luck to avoid corruption. A wizard that suffers corruption may burn a point of luck to avoid corruption. That luck can be burned after the player rolls to determine if the corruption result. Note the luck cannot be burned to avoid the spell misfire, only to avoid the corruption. And depending on the result, if you are in the corruption space, you could have a minor, major, or severe or greater corruption. You can have generic spell misfire. Although every spell table includes results from misfire, the judge may occasionally need generic effects. So this is generic spell misfire table. And deity disapproval. We talked about that in the DD in the cleric space. All right, the wizard grimoire. Ritualized magic. So the wizard grimoire is basically their spell book, and so that spell book can be different depending on the type of wizard you choose to play, whether it's a stone or tablets or scrolls. But experienced wizard learns to recognize magic in all its forms so that he can better steal it. Determining spells at new levels. Wizards know spells as indicated in the table. At each level, the wizard learns new spells. In the course of his travel, he may come across other spells. He may steal another wizard's grimoire. He may find etchings in a lost tomb. He may find new spells, and he may choose to learn that spell when he reaches a new level instead of rolling randomly. If the wizard has not come across sources of such knowledge, then his spell choice is determined randomly. Learning spell, just because a wizard finds a description of how to cast a spell doesn't mean he can actually pull it off. Your character must make a spell check. Your character must make a check to learn the new spell to which he's exposed, and then the judge will give you criteria for this check. So this is saying picking and rolling. This is just saying that if you get 4 spells that are absolutely horrible, you don't like any of them, talk to me, talk to the judge, and they will likely let you swap out one. Ritualized magic. Their spells listed here are primarily oriented around an adventuring wizard. As such, they do not include the great rites and rituals of the era, those magical invocations which take weeks or months to complete. Know that there are more powerful rituals. These rituals typically mandate spellburn and sacrifices of various kinds, which the caster can summon forth unearthly creatures from beyond space and time, whose powers are not limited by physics, we know. With that caveat, it is possible to cast ritualized versions of spells presented here, which are more powerful than their mundane brethren, especially for wizards, as ritualized casting of a normal spell can generate exceptional results. Typically, this ritualized version is actually a different incantation than the normal version of the spell, and as such is considered specialized knowledge that may be discovered or devised in its own manner. Ritualized magic for clerics can also involve some of the following conditions, but it's typically influenced by highly specialized rites. So you can use a circle of mages to do a ritualized magic, and then it goes through here and says for each magic user that adds, each wizard past the first adds half of his spell check bonus to the overall spell check. A casting circle has a minimum casting of 1 turn per mage involved and is often closer to 1 hour per mage involved. So this is no short thing. Additional benefit of casting circle is the ability for multiple mages to contribute to any additional spells cast during the ritual. For example, the spells Wizard Staff and Breathe Life may require casting additional spells to imbue the staff or a golem with a particular power. Sacrificing treasure or creatures can improve the results of the spell check. Typically, must have some relevance as an ingredient to the spell being cast. And here it goes through exactly how that works. So it can be obtained material sacrifice in rapidly advancing increments. Sacrificing enemies of the caster or his patrons or creatures appropriate to the spell type can grant a bonus. The judge's discretion and good taste is encouraged. There's also locations of power. You can go to a ritual, or you can go to a standing stone, a cemetery, other places of magical significance, and that can help. That can help with the ritualization of a spell. Rare ingredients can help. Automatic corruption. Offering one's own mortal shell for consumption of supernatural powers can greatly aid a casting, but it's extremely painful. Any casting ritual where the caster offers to voluntarily accept corruption can add an extra 2 to 6 bonus points of spells. So we're talking about how to increase your spell check, and it can be worth it as you look at some of the higher levels of spells. They can get pretty incredible. You can increase time. That can also increase the modifiers to a spell check. Of the different things in Dungeon Crawl Classics, the magic, the use of magic is one of the more complicated ones. So I encourage you to read it, and you'll probably reread and read it again until you figure out exactly how it works. But I also think it's one of the coolest things you could do, as I love the chaotic nature of it. Now again, I say chaotic, I don't mean the alignment chaos. I just the randomness of how it's used and applied, and how it might work, it may not work. It's pretty cool. So that's a little summary about magic use in Dungeon Crawl Classics. So what do you think? You like the wizard? Like to be able to cast spell? Do you like the chaotic? I know it's not chaos, not the alignment, but it's chaotic. I find this spell pretty chaotic when you don't know exactly what's going to happen. Oh, the risk. It feels like real magic. You're tapping into some power that you don't fully understand to evoke some effect, and you have to roll an ability check to see how well it happens. It may backfire. I like this about magic. I like this about the magic in Dungeon Crawl Classic. I don't know. What do you think? Do you not like that? Maybe you don't like the cast. Maybe you like more certain results. Leave that down in the comments below if you don't mind. And tell me what kind of spells, which of the spells do you think are most powerful? Which ones do you like the best? Leave that down in the comments. And while you're down there, if you don't mind, if you would please hit that like and the subscribe button. And if you like these videos, you might just click that bell for notification. I've been doing videos on each of the classes, and pretty soon we'll do the races. We'll get to those soon. If you like what I'm doing, please tune in for the next video. And until then, take care.